My name is Morna Gerard and I am interviewing Kathryn Michaelis for Georgia State University's Women's March Oral History Project. The date is June 30th, 2017 and the interview is taking place in Special Collections at Georgia State University. So Kathryn, let's start with the year that you were born and where were you born?
I was born in 1984 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
And when did you come to Atlanta?
I moved to Atlanta in 2013
Why did you come here?
for my job.
And where had you been between being born and coming to Atlanta?
A lot of places. My family moved around a little bit when I was growing up. After Oklahoma, we lived briefly in Charlottesville, Virginia, and then Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and then we moved to Greenwood, South Carolina when I was about 8, and that's where I lived through graduating high school. And then I went to college in Columbia, South Carolina. I lived in Chicago for a couple of years in my early 20s, and then I went to grad school at UNC Chapel Hill. Then I lived in Mississippi for 2 years, and then I moved to Atlanta.
When you were growing up, what were your family's political leanings?
My family is pretty liberal. My mom is a very staunch Democrat. She was a huge Hillary supporter. She's very sort of, really believes in, she's a teacher and she's really into sort of, trying to uplift people and believes in, taking care of people as a society and stuff like that. My dad I think my dad is a little less liberal than my mom, and he seems like he's maybe gotten a little more conservative in some ways, especially since they divorced, since he's been living by himself. But he's still, he voted for Obama, and he voted for Hillary, and I think he generally probably considers himself more of an independent, but he leans more towards Democrats.
Were they ever active politically?
My mom was a bit. We have a newspaper clipping that my mom has laminated at her house. That's a picture of my brother when he was 3 or 4 years old, and he's lying in the grass at a protest with my mom. He's holding a sign that says war is not healthy for children or other living things, and it's really cute. I think he was photographed for the newspaper, and I think it was in Oklahoma. It might have been in Virginia, but so she did stuff like that kind of off and on throughout when we were growing up. I remember being a kid and going with her to the state fair to man a table to register voters and things like that. So yeah, it wasn't something that was a huge focus of our life, but it was always kind of something that I was aware of and, would take part in every now and then.
Cool. And what party do you support?
I consider myself a Democrat. I guess we'll probably talk a little more about this later, but I would vote for a Republican if I ever found a Republican who I thought was worth a damn, frankly. But I live in Georgia. Most of them really are just way too conservative for me and focused really on the wrong things. So you kind of have to be a Democrat.
Before we move forward, can you tell me what your profession is?
I am a digital projects librarian. I work at Georgia State University Library.
Cool. So have you been involved in any political activities in the past?
Well, let's see. When I was in college, I, did sort of volunteering for campaign. I volunteered for this one Senate campaign. This woman named Inez Tenenbaum, who was the superintendent of education for a while in South Carolina, and she ran for Senate and lost to Jim DeMint. And I just would sort of, hang up posters and stuff for her. And then after I graduated college, I actually got a job for about 6 or 7 months working on the campaign of the state treasurer at the time. His name was Grady Patterson. He was one of the absolute best people I think I've ever met in my life. He was just a fantastic American in person and a really great guy. And he lost to Thomas Ravenel, who was later arrested for cocaine possession with intent to distribute, I think. So.
What did you do when you were working for him?
It was a pretty small campaign. It was like the campaign manager and then the finance director, and then me basically were the only full-time people, and so I kind of did a lot of just whatever needed to be done. It was pretty much my first real job. It was my first full-time job right out of college, and I helped with fundraising stuff, and I came to discover in the process that I'm really bad at fundraising, and I don't like it. But I did a lot of mailings and calling people, helping organize events, and some other stuff. But mostly that was kind of our focus.
I don't want to sound crass, but I think people would want to know, does that pay well?
No.
Okay.
I don't know how much the people above me got paid. I really have no idea, but at the time, I mean, I think I was 21 and I was living in a house with like a 3-bedroom house with like 4 other people, and my rent was about $175 a month. So I didn't really need it to pay a whole lot. I think it paid like $1,500 a month or something. And I worked a lot. Like I worked probably, most days were like 10-hour days, and most weeks were 6 days a week. So yeah, it was an interesting introduction to the working world.
Well, it's also an interesting introduction to the world of politics as well,
Mm-hmm.
like the real world of politics. You know.
Yeah, it was definitely, I feel like I was pretty naive about a lot of things because, I mean, I had never, done that kind of work before, and I was always, like, saying things to people that my boss would be like, don't say that, don't say that. Because, I don't know, I didn't really realize quite how measured you have to be and tactful, and I mean, this was in 2006, so, I don't think, Twitter wasn't a thing then, and Facebook was around, but it was still mostly just for personal use, and it wasn't the sort of online climate that it is today, and so I feel like if I were doing that now, it would be even more challenging.
Have you actually participated in a march before the one that you did in January?
No, I think this is the first march I've ever done.
Why did you decide to march on January 21st?
Well, I think the main reason was just that I was really angry. I was I don't know if there's a word for this. The Germans probably have a word for this feeling of like being so angry and depressed at the same time that you can't really act on your anger. I don't know. It was like this combination of anger and depression that sort of created this inertia in me. I don't know. It was I just felt I was really angry that we had gotten to a point as a country where we would elect someone like Donald Trump, and just all of the things that said to me about us as a society and about the way that people feel about women, and especially just the way the way that other women feel about women, and I don't know, I was really angry, and I felt kind of helpless, and I didn't know what to do, and I wanted to go to the march because I wanted to stand up and add to the numbers, and I wanted to show that, not all Americans feel that, we don't all support you. And
when did you decide to go to the march?
I think we decided to go, let's see, I don't remember when I heard about it. we probably decided to go maybe a month or so before it happened, or I guess a couple weeks after I had heard that it was going to be a thing. Because when I heard about it, we started thinking about it. We started thinking about going to the one in Washington when we first heard that was happening. But by the time we decided that we wanted to march, plane tickets had gotten a lot more expensive, and my husband said, I didn't even go to Washington to see Obama get inaugurated. And if I were going to spend that much money to go to Washington, I would want it to be to see somebody, to deal with somebody that I actually care about. So, and I kind of thought that it might be good to march locally too, to kind of represent here and make sure that people know that people in other places are actively resisting.
Before we talk about the march, can we go back to November, and can you talk about how the election night unfolded for you?
So I thought up until the returns were actually coming in, I hadn't really thought that there was an actual chance that Trump was going to win. I remember sitting on my couch, and I had my iPad out, and I was just refreshing NPR website over and over again, looking at the results come in. And I remember the moment when, I forget which state it was, but I looked at the projections that they had of the states that they thought were going to go which way, and I just looked at my husband at one point and I said, she's gonna lose. And really, until that point, which it was probably 10 o'clock on election night, it had not occurred to me as a real possibility. And so I didn't really know what to think about that. So I stayed up a little bit longer and watched a few more of the results come in, but by about 11 or 11:30, that they hadn't called it yet, and I was tired, and I thought, you know what, just let me go to bed one more night when I don't know. So just let me have 8 more hours where I can pretend that I don't, live in this reality. So I just went to bed, and then I woke up the next morning and looked at my phone, and there it was.
Did you come to work that next day?
I did. I came to work, and I was pretty irritable. I had a meeting that morning that I was already not looking forward to, and I was just not in the mood. And I feel like I was probably a little cranky. I was walking around and just listening to people talking to each other in the library, and honestly, I don't know, it seemed weird to me that anybody was talking about anything other than the election. Because it was just all I could think about.
When you said you were talking about we were making decisions, and then you said you talked about your husband. So I'm assuming your husband feels very similarly to you.
He does.
Can you talk about his reaction to the whole election situation?
He had a pretty similar reaction to me. We talk about politics at home sometimes, just sort of, at the end of the day, sometimes we'll just kind of download, what crazy thing happened today? And then after a while, usually I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. We have to cut it off. But we're pretty in sync about all the big things politically.
And so it was just you and him that decided to march together?
A friend of ours went with us too, yeah.
And let's talk about the day of the march itself. Can you tell me, at the beginning of the day, how you got from home to the actual march?
So we live in Decatur, and we drove from Decatur to the East Lake MARTA station. We met our friend Abby there, and so I have a MARTA pass, a monthly pass, and I had another Breeze card MARTA pass that I don't think had enough money on it, and so my husband John was going to have to add some money to that when we got there. And I think Abby was going to need to get one too. And so we were like, okay, well, we'll get there, kind of early, and we'll try to just go to the machines and get our passes taken care of. And we got there, and It was, I mean, you've seen the East Lake Corner State, you know, it's mostly outdoors, like the bottom part of it. I mean, it was so full, you could not move. You couldn't walk in. I mean, there were lines in front of the machines to get passes that were like not even lines. They were just masses of people. And we just looked at that and thought, oh my God. I think we stood in line for a couple minutes and then we were like, this is not happening. So after about 10 minutes or so, we just got an Uber and took it to downtown.
How did you feel though when you saw that crowd? Like,
I was surprised. I thought, oh my God, this is just one MARTA station. You know, this has got to be representative of something. I mean, I guess I hadn't really thought about how big the march was going to be because I didn't really know what to expect. But when I saw that, I thought, oh my gosh, this is big.
Did you take signs with you?
We did.
What did your sign say?
Mine said, so I took a couple of days trying to figure out what to put on my sign, and I kind of asked some of my friends, you know, like, oh, you know, I have these choices, like, what should I do? And everybody was saying, oh, put something positive, do something positive, and I was kind of thinking maybe that's the right thing to do, and then by the time the morning of the march came around, I thought, okay, you know, I'm angry. And so I put, what I really wanted to do was put up like a quote from Donald Trump that would just show kind of how despicable I think he is, and I ended up going with, you have to treat women like shit, which, so I put that one on one side, and I put on the other side, build bridges, not walls. So the people in front of me would see the angry one, and the people behind me would see the positive one. And my husband carried a sign that said, Donnie, you're out of your element, like from The Big Lebowski. Yeah, and very appropriate.
And what about your friend?
She didn't bring a sign.
Did you wear a hat, a pussy hat?
I did not. I wore a pink baseball cap. I crochet, but I haven't done it in a long time, and I thought about trying to make a hat, and I don't know, I just didn't really get it together to do it in time. So,
what did you think about when you see all these pink hats? You know, did you think that the message, the pussy hat message, was a positive one, or was it, because there's some people said it was, you know, crass or, you know, frivolous or whatever?
Well, I guess at the time, I mean, as far as it being crass, I think that the things that Trump has said and continues to say are way more crass than, you know, some knitted pink hats ever could be. And so that angle of it didn't really bother me, but I guess I kind of thought, I didn't really give it a whole lot of thought at that time, you know, I thought maybe, oh, this is, you know, whatever, this is a nice thing, but it didn't really seem like that big a deal. But actually since then, after, you know, looking at all the pictures I've looked at and sort of hearing other people talk about it, it seems like it was actually kind of a cool idea. I mean, especially because just sort of the visual, the optics of it, you know, when you look at a picture of a crowd and you can see, it's kind of a symbol of solidarity, I think, and just, you know, calling them pussy hats because of, I guess that probably, I mean, that came about in reference to the thing that he said, right? So kind of like taking that and like throwing it back in his face a little bit, I think that was powerful, more powerful than I initially had given it credit for.
I guess with all those pink hats, you could never pretend that was a march for anything but.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and especially you know, before the march, when you're on your way there and afterward leaving, it was kind of a way that you could see how many people were coming in and going out, like in different settings. So that was kind of cool.
Before the march took place, like leading up to it, the few days leading up to it, what were you expecting to get out of it?
I really wasn't sure what to expect, to tell you the truth. I mean, I think that, like I said, I wanted to go because I wanted to be part of a crowd. You know, I wanted to help create a crowd. because I know those things are really important to, to people who think that way, the way that he does. I mean, having this, my crowd at the inauguration was so big, and, so I kind of wanted to make sure that I was part of that. And I also, I guess I was hoping for like some catharsis a little bit, and for the most part, I really wasn't totally sure what to think. I guess I was just kind of thinking, please, like, I just want to feel good. I want to be around people who think the way I do and, aren't crazy.
Is there one particular issue or one or two particular issues that you cared like very passionately about that you felt, this is what I'm marching for? There are a lot of issues that I feel really passionately about. I think probably the top two are reproductive rights, which obviously, as a woman and as a person who understands reality, I know it's really important. And also, just the big thing that I've been thinking about since the election has been the refugee issue. Immigrants mostly, but mainly refugees, just the fact that we're becoming a place that is not, I don't know, it just, the attitude of the current administration towards, people who desperately need a place to go and, to come somewhere and be safe is really sickening to me. And I just don't understand it. It just seems so counter to everything that America is supposed to stand for. It makes me really angry and really sad. So. When you, we'll come back to this.
Mm-hmm.
So you got an Uber to the march.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you get dropped off?
We got dropped off near the Center for Civil and Human Rights, kind of not too far from where the speaker stage was, and it was raining so hard. I hadn't really prepared very well for that, but like the day before, my husband and I went and we got like just a couple of ponchos, like kind of cheap plastic ponchos, and we're wearing those, and I wish I had thought about it far enough in advance to laminate my sign because it got kind of ruined. So we were right by the Center for Civil and Human Rights.
And tell me about what you were seeing around you when you got out of the car.
It was a huge crowd. It was massive. They had some tents set up, but there was no way that we were going to be able to get under them because there were just too many people and there weren't enough tents. So we were just kind of, we got there kind of early, and so we hung out for probably about an hour and a half or so before the speakers actually started.
In the rain?
Yeah, in the rain. It was raining. It was raining for the first while that we were there. I don't remember exactly how long, but then it stopped eventually. And I think by the time the speakers came out and started, the rain had mostly stopped, so that was good.
But during all this time when it was raining, what was the mood of the crowd?
It was really exciting. It was really kind of high energy, and everybody I was really impressed that many people had come out in that kind of weather, and really heartened to see that. So that was cool. But yeah, the rain didn't really seem to make a whole lot of difference to the way people were feeling.
That's great. Because you had your signs, what other kinds of signs were you seeing that kind of stuck out to you?
Let's see. Before I came up here, I was looking at the pictures I took just to kind of refresh my memory. There were a lot of good ones. There was one that I liked that I think I showed you before. That was like a drawing of the female reproductive organs, and one of the ovaries is like giving the finger. And there was this one girl I saw who had a sign that was cut and stuck to her chest, and it was in the shape of a pair of boobs, and it said, "My sign is up here," with an arrow, and she was holding a sign above her head. I saw there was a guy that had a bright pink sign that said, "Not my locker room," which I really appreciated. Cool to see men who get it.
And well, let's talk about that. So I'm assuming most of the people there were women, but talk about like the kinds of people that you were seeing.
Yeah, there were mostly women. There were actually, there were a good many men though. I guess I don't know what, it would be really interesting to see like a percentage breakdown, but yeah, there were a fair number of men there, though I would say it was a majority women, and there were a lot of kids too.
And what about different nationalities or sort of ethnic background?
There were definitely, I think it was majority was white for sure. And honestly, I can't remember exactly. It's been, a few months now, and so it's kind of hard for me to remember exactly what the crowd looked like, but I remember thinking at the time that there were like a disproportionate number of white people there, though there were, obviously there were people of color, a significant number of people of color, but.
So let's talk about the speakers. Did you get a chance to actually hear the speakers?
I did. Yeah, I think I heard all of them because we were close enough to where we could hear them, and we had been standing there for a while before they started, so I think we heard the beginning and the end.
Well, you're one of the lucky ones.
Yeah.
So talk about the speakers and which of the speakers impacted you.
So John Lewis was the keynote speaker, and he was definitely good to listen to. I love him, and I love that I get to vote for him.
Yeah.
It's so nice. But he was he was really inspirational, and he talked a lot about just how important it is to resist and to get into good trouble, and it did a lot, I think, to sort of fire up the crowd and really get us ready to start marching. And there were a couple of bands that played, which I didn't know that was going to happen. They were pretty good, but they played sort of really close to the end, and I think at that point everybody was kind of like, okay, let's get going. There were a few other speakers that I really enjoyed, and I don't remember a lot of their names because they're not people that I was aware of before, so I'd have to go look them up again. But there was one woman who, she was Muslim, and I think she is involved with some kind of, with like an Islamic affairs group here in town, and she talked a lot about just sort of the challenges that are going to be coming up, and like how important it is that we all kind of look out for each other. And there was a couple of lawyers who spoke, like I think civil rights lawyers, who just talked about, everybody's message was kind of like, let's all brace ourselves and stay strong and stay positive, and this isn't going to be easy, but we need to, it's really important, so we need to kind of come together and move forward.
So so did you stay right to the end of the bands playing before you started marching?
Yeah.
Can you talk about like getting into sort of like marching?
Yeah, it took us a little while to kind of figure out which way the march was heading, because at first, it took so long for the movement of the crowd to actually be where we could see it happening. It was, I think, after John Lewis walked off the stage, we just kind of followed him with our eyes, like saw where he was going, and then he kind of disappeared, and eventually, people started moving, and we were able to kind of get information with everybody. And I think that probably took about another 20 or 30 minutes of standing and waiting.
But did it feel good to start actually marching?
Yeah. Once we started marching, it definitely felt good to be walking along, and because you get to see more people than you'd seen before, and more signs. And
so let's talk about chants. Were you comfortable chanting?
Yeah.
Some people aren't comfortable, like, just shouting out loud.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't really lead any chants or anything, but the one that I heard the most that day was Not One Step Back, and that was, I think John Lewis started that one when we were, when he was speaking before the march actually started, and, just talking about how we're not going to go back to the way things used to be, no matter how much some people want them to, and yeah, so we kind of, we did that one a lot, and I'm trying to remember what were some of the other ones. I didn't hear, there was, This Is What Democracy Looks Like. I didn't hear a whole lot of different chants. I think maybe the people that I was sort of marching in step with did those like off and on, but yeah, there weren't a whole lot of different ones that I heard.
Along the way, did you see a lot of police officers, and how were they interacting with the crowd?
I did see a good number of them, and I mean they were pretty low key. Like they really didn't. I didn't see them actually, telling people to do much of anything, because we kind of just stayed on the route for the most part, and I saw a couple people hugging the police officers, and we were like waving at them and saying thank you, and they were like waving at us and stuff, and I think it kind of seemed like they sort of ran from maybe indifferent and just doing their jobs to like actively supporting the message of the march, because I mean I think most of the police that I saw at least were African American, and I think probably, I mean maybe they were, I don't know, some of them might have been simpatico with us, and maybe some of them weren't, but they certainly didn't show it.
Yeah. Did you see any counter-protesters along the way?
I saw one, and I forget what his sign said. It was something about like abortion being evil or something, and at one point he was like standing on a sidewalk as we were walking by him, and he was yelling something, and all the people around me just started chanting, "Not one step back, not one step back," and just drowned him out. And that was really the only one that I saw.
Yeah. Did you get emotional at any time?
I didn't get emotional in the sense of like, getting choked up or anything like that, but it did feel really like a catharsis to me. It was very, because before the march, I mean, I had just been sort of spiraling a little bit, just thinking about everything, and and it just felt really uncertain, and I felt like sort of honestly betrayed by the people who, elected him, and I sort of felt like, is everyone crazy? And then it was really great to just go stand in this crowd of 60,000 people and look around and see, oh, right, not everybody voted for him. Not everybody feels that way, and a lot of people who live in and around Atlanta really, believe the way I do, and they want good things for people. And so that was, it was really, really good, I think, to see that demonstrated in such a concrete and huge way.
Were you aware at all throughout the day of like the numbers that were marching in other cities all across, not just the United States, but throughout the world?
I think before we went to the march here, I had seen something in the news about the march in DC and how big they were predicting that was going to be. And I think after I heard that, I kind of thought, wow, that's massive. And I kind of wondered about Atlanta. And then throughout the day, we were kind of trying to figure out how many people were at the march in Atlanta, and the AJC had put something about it on their website, and they kept updating the number. I guess kind of throughout the day they were kind of keeping up with it, and by the end of the day, I think it said, the last I heard was like 60,000 or 65,000, something like that. So yeah, but I don't think it was until I got home later that I realized how many different marches there were all around the country and all over the world.
Yeah. So you got to your march, and you got to the capital. Is it that where the sort of ending part was? Were you able to get close to anything at that point? Because I know a lot of people did not manage to.
Like close to the capital?
Yeah. There was I think the police locked off some.
I mean, I guess I didn't try to get like super close to it. We just kind of stayed on the route, and then it seemed like when we reached that point as a group, it kind of started petering out, and so we just thought, okay, we'll walk back to the MARTA station and kind of figure it out from here.
So you went to Georgia State MARTA station?
Yeah.
Was it busy?
It was not as busy. I mean, it was a lot busier than I think it would have been on any other Saturday, but as far as, it was nothing like the East Lake Station had been on the way in.
How are you feeling once you got to the end of the march and you're on your way home?
I was feeling good. I felt, kind of hungry, but I felt a little bit relieved and a little bit more sort of like relaxed and able to like clear-headed, I guess, than I had been before. It was funny when we were on the train, there were, on the way there, it seemed like, I mean, everybody we saw was on their way to the march. But then when on the way back, there were a lot of people who were on the train who had not been at the march. They were just on the train for some other reason, and we were getting a lot of weird looks. I think, there were a lot of people who were kind of, what's going on? Oh, right. But, so that was kind of funny. But, yeah, I mean, I felt pretty good. I was glad that we did it, and I was glad that we went out in spite of the weather and that we took part in it, because it felt, it feels really good to be sort of part of that kind of energy. You don't get to experience that very often, that many people coming together for a common purpose. And
I mean, that was the biggest march in history, I think.
I think so. I mean, it must have been, yeah.
And no arrests.
Yeah,
no
isn't
violence.
that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I definitely didn't see any of that where I was, and everybody, I mean, the whole crowd was just so like friendly and just sort of, doing what needed to be done, and nobody was really like bothering each other. I don't know, it's just.
Were there any parts of the day that just like stuck out, like that you still think back to?
Let's see. I guess, I mean, I remember I think the feeling that I got showing up at the MARTA station and seeing the crowd and going, ah! That was pretty significant. And it was, I don't know, I mean, there weren't a whole lot of moments that really stick out to me, but I guess just sort of, I do remember, I guess one moment I remember is when we were marching in one place, I think it was by the Phillips Arena. We were just walking down the street there, and I just remember looking across there's like I guess it's like the interstate that's under there, and then there's a bridge on the other side, and the crowd was moving around to the other side, and just looking over there and seeing how many people were over there and how many people were still behind us, and like that, between us and the other side was nothing but people marching. That was pretty amazing. And yeah, I mean, it was cool just sort of seeing everybody. And we talked to this one woman at the beginning, when we first got there, and it was raining so hard. There was this woman who let us like stand under her umbrella. She had a really big umbrella, and so we were chatting with her a little bit, and she was really nice. She was probably in her 50s or something. She was an African-American woman, and she was, we were just kind of chatting, and she was like, I have never done anything like this before. I have never, really felt like I needed to, and now I really feel like I do. And she was talking about some people that she worked with who were pretty conservative and really into Trump, and she mentioned that she was walking down the hall one day carrying like a stack of papers, just something to do with work, and one of her coworkers asked her, "Oh, are those Hillary Clinton's emails?" And she said, "No, they're Donald Trump's tax returns." I thought that was hilarious.
That's great.
So that was cool.
So once you got home, did you check the news, see what was going on?
A little bit. I mean, I read a few things online, a few just like I read, the AJC. I was checking them to see the numbers, and I just read the articles that they had about it was pretty straightforward. Just how many people were there and what happened and blah blah blah. And I guess I saw like a few headlines, and I read just a few things that people were saying. I know some of it was kind of negative, and it was like, what do these women think they're gonna accomplish with this? And but it was coming from people who don't really understand. Whatever.
What did you think about media coverage generally, in the days that followed the march? I guess I didn't really go out of my way to pay attention to the media coverage of it. I kind of felt like, I was there, I know what it was like. It happened, it's fine. I did kind of enjoy hearing Donald Trump talk about how it was, it wasn't there weren't that many people, and because you can tell that really he knows that there were. And I kind of just I guess it was like over the next couple of days was when I really did realize how many there were, and was reading things in like an online community that I participate in sometimes, and hearing people from the middle of Texas and Florida and Kentucky talking about oh yeah, there were 3,000 people who marched in my town of 20,000. So that was kind of cool. You went back to work on the Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk? Were you talking to friends and colleagues about your experiences?
Not a lot. I talked to my family about it the day that it happened, and I think I talked to you about it after we both got back. I didn't really talk about it with a whole lot of people at work. I think I might have told Jeremy just kind of generally how it was, but yeah, I didn't really bring it up at work that much.
You said you talked to your family about
Mm-hmm.
it. What did they think about you marching?
Well, my they were really supportive of it, and they all kind of had different reactions. My mother-in-law actually went and marched in Asheville with some of her friends, and she was obviously really supportive, but my dad really liked my husband's sign because he's a big Lebowski fan. My mom had thought about going. I think my mom had initially thought about going to the march in DC, but then she ended up not going for several reasons. And she was really glad that we had gone, and she was really happy and supportive. And so I wore this sweatshirt when I marched that was had been given to my mom by her sister, who she was very, very close to, and she died of breast cancer when I was probably in middle school, and my mom gave it to me not too long ago, and so I wore that as kind of a, kind of honoring my female ancestors, forebears, and so I told her about that, and she was really thought that was really sweet, and obviously I told my brother that we went, and he just kind of went, oh cool, and then went back to his life.
So you said that the march was cathartic and all that, but since the march, in the days that followed the march, how were you feeling when you saw things just kind of the reality of our lives under this administration sort of take shape?
I feel like that kid in that YouTube video who's like getting out of the dentist and he's coming out from under anesthesia. Is this real life? Is this real life? I mean, honestly, I know that sounds flip, but it's true. I just don't, every day, I mean, I used to listen to NPR all the time in the car and at home, and sometimes I just can't now because I can't stand to listen to him talk for longer than a couple seconds. And sometimes it's just so frustrating and makes me so angry and depressed that I just can't even listen to it. And I know that's not a constructive way to deal with it, but you know, it just seems like every day there's some new thing. Like yesterday, you know, the whole tweet about the what's her name, Brzezinski bleeding from a facelift, and like, why would you say something like that? It's just so unnecessarily mean. And also, what really makes me angry about it is that women like her get facelifts because men like him have created this standard that they tell us all that we have to conform to be successful and to be valued, you know, and it's just shit like that happens all the time. It makes me so angry. And I feel like, I mean, I look at him and I look at the things that he does and says, and I feel like he's a toddler, just sort of walking around, knocking things over, and, you know, picking things up and putting them down wherever he wants, and nobody can control him. And it seems like they're not trying that hard, you know? I mean, I guess there are people who, you know, you hear the Democrats talking about him, and obviously they're criticizing him, and but the Republicans really don't seem to be. And since they have a majority everywhere, it's like, I don't know when is this going to end? I mean, that's what I ask myself every day. Like, what is enough? What is too much? Where is the line? Where is the line? It's like he keeps pushing and pushing and pushing the line, and I just don't even know if there is a line anymore. I don't know how Paul Ryan sleeps at night, honestly. I mean, I listen to him just defending Trump and talking about, oh, well, he's new at this. I mean, Barack Obama was new at this too, you know?
Yeah.
Every president is new at this. Some of them are a lot better equipped than others.
You almost feel like you need that there was a TV show with like a super nanny that came in and dealt with like difficult children. It's like we need one of those.
Exactly.
Have you protested anything since you got back from the march?
I have not. I thought about going. I kind of wanted to go to the March for Science, but April and May I was really busy. I was out of town almost every weekend, and so I couldn't really. I couldn't make it to that one.
And have you done any letter writing or call?
I've started giving money a lot more. I've started giving a monthly donation to Planned Parenthood, and I've given money to Southern Poverty Law Center and the Magnolia Fund, which is like a Georgia-based abortion fund. And you know, I tried to get involved with a refugee organization in Clarkston, but it turned out that I couldn't really make it work with my schedule, and so I may do something for them in the future, but I'm not sure. Yeah, so I don't know, and I joined an Indivisible group, but most of the things that they do happen on like Tuesdays at 11 o'clock, so it's been kind of hard for me to keep up with that. So honestly, no, I haven't been doing as much as I feel like I ought to be, but.
Well, I think a lot of people are feeling like that, but I think there's also this concern that we'll burn out if we do too much.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's definitely valid.
Do you see, like, with this constant barrage of new stories almost every day, do you see, like, at some point, are we just going to burn out? Or, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking, like, how can this keep going for 4 years? How can any of us stays is, and that's the thing, is like, at first, I felt like I really needed to pay attention to everything, and I really needed to stay informed and keep up with what was going on. And now I feel like if I do that, I'm gonna go crazy by the end of this term.
Who the heck knew that listening to NPR
I
would be so
it's so hard on your blood pressure, like it really shouldn't be.
Would you think about going to future rallies or marches?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, because there's all these indivisible groups, there are people going down to try to meet with their representatives, there's a lot of letter writing. Do you think that we have many months ahead of us? Do you think that we can maintain momentum? And how do we do that?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like it's kind of impossible to maintain the kind of momentum that was in place right after the march happened, just because everybody has lives, everybody has jobs and families and things that they have to pay attention to that aren't resisting the Trump agenda. But I do feel like it definitely seems like there are enough people who are committed to speaking out about things that, I think that as long as it's things keep going the way that they are, I definitely think that there's still going to be a sizable resistance, no matter how much longer it keeps on going. And I've been, I hate when people talk about the media like it's one thing, because, obviously it's not, but I've been kind of impressed with the media. At least the way the media outlets that I sort of keep up with. It's like I've been reading a lot of the Washington Post, and, I listen to NPR and New York Times, and they really seem like they're not shying away from criticizing him and being really honest about what's going on. And so, I think that's really good, because for a while, it kind of, like during the election, I got a little bit disillusioned with it, because I just felt like I guess I felt like people shouldn't have been giving him as much coverage as they were, and because it seemed like everything was just so sensationalist, and everything that was happening was just so out there and wacky. And now it's like, okay, you have to pay attention because he's the president now. And I think I might have told you about this a little bit before, but my husband and I went to Scotland recently, and we watched a lot of TV news there, which is not something I really do a lot here, because we don't have cable, but we watched like the news on TV, and it was really interesting to see sort of the way that they were talking about Trump, as opposed to the way people here do, because here it's sort of like they're just reporting on these things, like, okay, yeah, this happened, he said this, he did this. Some people are criticizing him for this, and some Republicans are unhappy, but that's sort of, it seems like the tone is a lot more neutral and a lot more just sort of straightforward journalistic. But the news in the UK was like, Donald Trump, crazy person, does that, blah, blah, blah. And they seem to sort of have this tone of like, the way that I feel, which is, when is this gonna end? Enough is enough. Like, how is this still going on? And
yes,
so that was interesting. And I kind of wish that our media would be a little bit more like that. But I guess if they were, they'd just be accused of being really alarmist and biased. And
what do you we're sort of in a situation right now where there's such a divide between basically Democrats and Republicans, or the right and the left, or whatever it is. How do we bring people back to the center, back to just talking to one another with civility again?
I really kind of feel like it has to start from the top. Like it has to, because as long as people see Republicans and Democrats in Congress, just, basically like standing in a corner with their arms crossed, like refusing to talk to each other. I feel like that really sort of sets a tone for the way that people think about the issues and the way that they vote and the way that they think about each other. And like I heard an interview the other day with Joe Biden where he was talking about the Merrick Garland Supreme Court nomination and how, they completely stonewalled it, the Republicans did. And he was talking about how he had been, talking to several Republican senators about like trying to get them to, vote for him or at least have hearings. And they were telling him, Joe, I know it's the right thing to do. I like him. I mean, I think he's a good guy. If I do this, the Koch brothers are going to put out a hit on me basically and like tell everybody to stop donating to, which is just, I mean, it's just so cowardly and it's so not what you were elected to do, And I feel like money really has warped politics so much in this country. And I mean I don't know what we as individuals can really do about that. I don't know that there is anything, but as far as like just things that we can maybe do is I think that social media is a real problem, honestly, when it comes to talking about politics, because if the first thing you learn about somebody is just that they support the Second Amendment and that they don't think abortion should be legal, then you're obviously, somebody like me is going to look at them and go, okay, whatever. But if I were to meet somebody first face to face and like talk to them and get to know them as a person and think, oh, they're really funny and like their kid's really cute or whatever, and then I find out later that they have these views, I might be more willing to sort of like engage with them. But I think that just the way that we interact with people is so surface sometimes, and I think that kind of is a real barrier to productive dialogue. I deleted my Facebook account like maybe a month or so after the election, and I have not missed it because honestly I just got really tired of seeing all that stuff, and I got tired of even the stuff that I support, even like all the Pantsuit Nation posts and things like that. It just seemed like every day it was like, sign this, do this, like think about this and take care of this, this is happening, this is terrible, and I was just like, it's just so much white noise and so much clutter, and I just couldn't really deal with it anymore. So yeah, I don't know. I think as far as how do we deal with the divide, I really do think it needs to kind of start at the higher levels, and I think that could help a lot, changing the tone of, because it would change the way that politics is covered in the media, and it would change the way that the things that people read about, and then the way that they think about issues, and
huge paradigm shift.
Yeah.
What do you suggest? Like we have a ways to go. Do you have any strategies for like people could use to sort of keep themselves from falling into the bits of depression or
delete your Facebook, everybody.
That actually be a good idea.
I think that honestly has been good for me. I think the feeling of connection and of community that I got from going to the march was, I think, probably one of the best things that I feel like, one of the best kind of antidotes to the depression and despair that is really easy to feel if you just kind of wallow in things. And so I think, getting involved definitely with people who are doing the things that, supporting the things that you support is really can be constructive. And even if it's not necessarily a political thing, I volunteered at an animal shelter, and that is one of the best things I think for, that has been one of the things that makes me feel really good since the election, and sort of gives me interaction with a community of people and that are doing good things in the world. And I think that I mean, I think really it can be difficult just because everybody's so busy and, you know, I mean, like I personally am kind of an introvert and it's hard for me to make myself get out and like meet new people and talk to people sometimes, but I think doing that is really helpful. I mean, it just sort of makes you feel less alone and like gets you a little out of your head a little bit. So I think staying active and doing stuff like that in your community is really good.
I think there's probably a power to not being isolated.
Yeah.
You know, when you are isolated, you're less likely to feel like you have any power.
Mm-hmm.
So we have many months until the 2018 election, and then again 2 years till the 2020 election. Let's talk about a cup half full sort of scenario. What do you hope will happen in the upcoming months?
Well, it was funny. One of the other interviews that I was listening to yesterday had said, the woman you were talking to said like the same thing that I have kind of thought but haven't really wanted to say, which is like best case scenario, I think Donald Trump decides, I don't want to do this anymore, I quit. Which, I mean, I really don't think he wants to do it, but I don't think that is going to happen. I mean, I think really best case scenario is the Democrats take over the House and the Senate in 2018 and they start being able to actually, you know, just to dictate the conversation a lot more and to kind of, I mean, I don't want to say like run roughshod over the Republicans the way they've been doing, but I mean, yeah, you know, to sort of like block this legislation that he's trying to push through that is really harmful to people and maybe be more proactive about trying to like get other, you know, things that are going to be more supportive moving. And I mean, I kind of feel like that's the best case scenario is that people get tired of just this train wreck and think maybe this is enough and like vote for change again.
Well, let's flip the coin. You know, cup half empty scenario.
Mm-hmm.
What do you fear the most?
I mean, I fear that. I mean, honestly, like I didn't think he could get elected once. I mean, maybe he could get elected twice. I don't know. You know, I think 8 years of Trump would be. I mean, can you imagine just the collective blood pressure of the country, like having to be this angry and frustrated all the time? I mean, it's so taxing.
Yeah.
I can't imagine like you know, just all the things that could go wrong. I mean, all the things that he does that don't even seem to matter, that I'm like, why is this a priority for you? Like, you know, removing these designations on these Native American landmarks that keep them protected and stuff. I'm like, why do you feel like you need to do this? How is this bothering anyone? It's fine, just leave it alone. And then, you know, the healthcare and immigration, I mean, all these people who are being deported now who have been here for 20-something years and have families and run, you know, have businesses. And I mean, it's like, why do you not want these people here? Like, if you didn't know they were here, they weren't causing a problem.
They're not the problem.
I mean, I just feel like, I mean, so much, if that kind of stuff keeps happening, like, just so much could go wrong. And I mean, even whether it's 4 years or 8 years, I mean, so many people's lives could be really, really negatively affected by it. And it really worries me.
It's going to be very interesting in maybe 10 years' time, looking back on this period and sort of evaluating, you know, how we got here and what we did to sort of hopefully to sort of move beyond it, which is one of the reasons I think it's really good that we have these oral histories where we are actually sort of documenting how we're feeling about all of this. There will be marches in the future. What's your advice to anybody who's going to go on a march?
I mean, I would advise people really to do it. I mean, I think it's it can be a really positive experience. If it's surrounding an issue that is important to you, and I think it can be a really good way to sort of feel connected and plugged in to other people who that have, it's a good way to be involved in like some good energy, good community. And I think as far as logistics go, think about your transportation early. Get your MARTA card the day before. I think sort of be prepared to be a little uncomfortable, like whether, plan for the weather and stuff like that. Think about how long you're going to be there. Bring food, bring water.
Is there anything I haven't asked you that you feel like you want to talk about?
I don't think so. No, I think we've covered everything.
Any last thoughts?
No, not really. No.
I think
I've said everything.
You said a lot of good stuff. Well, I want to thank you for taking part in
Yeah,
that
thank
project.
you.